So thank you for joining everyone and welcome to this webinar hosted by Centrix Software to show you how to reduce cost, risk and time when moving to Office 365. Dan Kirtley, Product Marketing Manager, will discuss the benefits and challenges of Office 365. He will also explain how 365 IQ, an analytics tool from Centrix Software, allows you to optimize purchasing, perform an efficient migration while significantly reducing risk of failure. If you do have any questions, please type them in the Q&A box in the bottom right-hand side of your screen, and Dan will answer them at the end. So Dan, over to you.
Thanks very much, Jo. So just going to talk through the agenda firstly, just to add to what Jo was saying. So the agenda for this webinar is questions you might be asking around Office 365, depending on where you are in your adoption. And then how that translates into the different steps which are involved in adopting Office 365. I'm going to talk about why it's important to understand user behaviour to get the most out of your migration and any plans that you might make, any decisions that you might want to undertake. I'm then going to give you an overview of 365 IQ from Centrix Software, which is an analytics solution, and then at the end just an opportunity for Q&A. So there's a Q&A box in the bottom right hand side of your WebEx event center. If you just type in questions throughout, I'll be happy to pick those up at the end. We can go back to any slides if there's anything in particular that you're interested in. But yeah, feel free to add those in. It's great to have an interactive session at the end of this. Okay, so this is a slide which identifies the journey that you might be undertaking in adopting Office 365. So if we think about the steps that you take, there's the pre-purchase point. So there's the steps that you want to think about in terms of, are you able to move to Office 365 in terms of whether you can physically do it based on your system requirements, and also just get an understanding of how much it's going to cost. So once you go through that particular process, you will then move on to the next step, which is purchasing Office 365, and then what your deployment plan might be. So think about who's able to move immediately, what blockers there might be, and how to make the most efficient step, how to plan it out using different technologies, anything like that. So all of those different steps that you might want to take. So once you've set out your deployment plan, the next steps that you might want to undertake are understanding adoption rate. So you want to get the most out of Office 365. If you've deployed it, how much are people using it? What areas are they that they're using? Are you getting the most out of your license that you've purchased? You want to see if the adoption tracking is against your plan. And also, you may want to look at whether legacy tools are being used less, because of course there's the opportunity here to remove legacy tools which have the same sort of functionality that are available within Office 365. So some examples might be other instant messenger clients, which can be replaced by Link, or it might be other online storage solutions like Box, Dropbox, etc., or other free solutions which can be replaced by OneDrive or SharePoint as you move forwards. So that's the kind of process that you might that might take 3 months up to 9 months, depending on, of course, the size of your organisation. And then at the point of anniversary, you might want to consider what you've done, how much people are using it. Are you getting the most out of your license? And there's the opportunity there to either say, actually, I can see that there's been a great amount of value in Office 365, so I want to get more people onto the higher licenses. Or it might be that you actually see that there are areas which aren't being used, and you can right size for a period of time. So all of this, by being able to understand how your users work, you're able to make those decisions a lot easier. And I'll go into more detail about that as we go through the webinar. So, as I explained in the previous slide, the different steps that you take roughly translate into the following tasks. So, the first task is to pick the right Office 365 licenses for your organisation. The step after that, following that, is planning how to adopt Office 365. Then there's deployment, and you want to deploy as rapidly and efficiently as possible with minimal risk, so that you don't affect your users as you move them. The last thing that you want to do is to move your users and actually find out that they're unable to work for a period of time. Obviously, that's going to cause a lot of impact within the business. Then, following that, there's tracking your adoption, making sure that it meets targets, and then there's the opportunity to train your users. So you can actually look at how your users are working now to make sure that they're working differently, using what Office 365 is available, allow them to collaborate better. So the reason that I've translated it into these following tasks is that we can then see how that maps to usage, and how we can look at those different tasks within the 365 IQ Analytics product. So I'll now go into 365 IQ. Firstly, I'll want to give you an overview of 365 IQ and the suite of products that Centrix Software provides. What 365 IQ does, it looks at devices, looks at all applications which run on these devices, looks at the content that users are using, and also looks at cloud usage. But all of this is, rather than just a simple inventory, what we're looking at is real usage across your entire organisation, across your network. What that then allows us to do is to make some decisions which are specific to Office 365. So the 365 IQ solution and Workspace IQ, which is the wider product, is delivered by agents which sit on your devices that track all of the usage that I just talked about. That's delivered into SaaS infrastructure, and what that allows you to do then is actually to access all of that information simply through a web browser. So what we're able to do, so if we think going back to the different steps, pick, plan, deploy, track and train, the first thing that we look at is picking the right Office 365 licenses for your organisation. So what we're doing here is we're looking at all of the way that people work, the applications that they use, and mapping that to the licenses that would be most appropriate for your organisation. So I'll be very clear, this is identifying the minimum requirements. So what we're doing here is allowing you to see if you were to move to Office 365 based upon how your users work now, what the minimum requirements might be. So it's the first step that you can take to understand and ascertain where you might want to go. That's not to say that you wouldn't want to go for higher licenses. It gives you the opportunity to actually look and see how your users are working, and actually to say, well, actually, I want everyone to be on, for example, Enterprise E3, because I want to get the most out of Office 365. The next step that we look at is planning how to adopt Office 365. So what we want to ensure firstly is that you'll be able to move. The first thing that we can see at a very high level is the number of users that are able to that are ready to migrate to Office 365 immediately, and then the number of devices. And the reason that number can be slightly different is because there's not a direct match between the two. We can go into a lot more detail about that, and so, for example, if we just look further down into this, you can see the actual detailed readiness. So we can see the number of users and devices who are ready to migrate immediately, and then there might be different incompatibilities which you can look and see across your organisation, such as is the OS incompatible, is .NET incompatible, or do you have incompatible browsers? And the reason that's important to be able to see all of those different incompatibilities is that it allows you to make the decision on what to upgrade first. So for example, if you've got an incompatible OS, the first thing for you to do is to upgrade the OS, because then that upgrades .NET and it upgrades the browser anyway, so you're taking all of those steps. If you've just got an incompatible browser, you're able to see that and able to upgrade that. You can delve down into a lot more detail there, so this is just a kind of overview of what you can see. The next important step that you will be interested in undertaking is looking at where your content is accessed from now, with the intent of moving it to the cloud. So it's often fairly straightforward to have an understanding that your content is stored in a number of different places and people access it from different locations. But what 365IQ does is it looks at the applications which are running, ties that back to the user, and also then looks at all of the content that they're accessing through those applications and all of the different locations that they're accessing that from. So it may be, as an example, and we've had a number of customers who say this, that they know that a number of their users are accessing files directly from email. It's obviously quite an expensive way of storing your files. So you're actually able to see from this that how people are accessing those files. Are they storing them locally? But with that, you're able to make and prioritize the decision on moving your users onto OneDrive, onto SharePoint, or onto any other Office 365 supported shared license. What we also do is look at the type of file. The reason that this is important is that there are some specific file types which are supported with Office 365, and there are some which aren't. So, for example, Access databases, they're not supported if you move them up into the cloud. So it might be that you need to understand this and then make changes. If you know that people are using Access databases, move them to Excel, anything like that. But it allows you to pinpoint that usage. Then the next step that you undertake is following your plan is to undertake deployment. What you're able to do is to look at users and the devices that you're able to move them onto. So you can see all of the devices that a particular user uses. And then on the flip side, you're able to look at a device, look at the number of users who are using that device, and also to be able to see exactly which incompatibility needs to be resolved before you're able to move the user to Office 365. So you've got all of those steps available to you to make that deployment. Following this, so as you undertake your deployment, what you will want to do is to be able to track your workload adoption over a period of time. So you can often we find that organisations will adopt Office 365 and any other technology in a per technology basis. So Office 365 can be split out into productivity tools, which are your standard Windows, Excel, etc. Collaboration, which is Lync, Enterprise Social, which is Yammer, Email, which is Exchange, and Document Sharing, which is OneDrive and SharePoint. And we can also look at the equivalent tools for each of those categories from third parties. So if, for example, you wanted to move email first, you can track that usage over time, make sure that that people are adopting Office 365 before perhaps you then move on to collaboration. So you start moving your link clients together. It basically just allows you to have an overview, see what you're doing, keep track of exactly how well that adoption is going. You can also see at a very high level the Office 365 adoption. So what we can see here is the number of users on one day of Office 365, the trend of the upward trend of usage, and also the total usage that we've seen. So the red line that we're looking at there is the total number of users who've ever used Office 365 in your organisation, and then the blue bar is showing, if we look at the top of the blue bar, we're seeing the number of users that day versus the total number of users who've ever used it. So that gives you the ability to just test the water, make sure that your users are using it correctly. It's a great kind of management dashboard overview, just allowing you to see that you're getting the most out of your license. And finally, you have the ability to train your users. So what you can't expect to happen is just that you provide a technology to your end users and they will all just use it immediately. A lot of the time it's actually more about a cultural change. So if you provide Yammer, for example, the collaboration tool that is provided within Office 365, it's a great tool to allow your users to post any particular things that have been happening at work, feedback, anything like that. But what you'll most likely find is that if you just provide that to people and don't get them trained up, then they may well not actually use that, may well not collaborate. With 365 IQ, you're actually able to see how much people are using Yammer. Or you could see that someone's using a third-party IM client. You can train them to use Link. So, it might be that you provided Link, but 3 months down the line, actually, they're still using a third-party IM client. So you can identify that. Or it might be, as an example, they're still saving files locally. You want to train them to use OneDrive. So, with all of these points, basically, what it's allowing you to do is look at how people are working now and how you can get the most out of it as you go along. And of course, you can, if you train those users, you can then go back to tracking whether they are adopting it as you wish. So that's the end of the webinar. Quite a short webinar, but hopefully very useful to you to understand how you can get the most out of Office 365. Just want to check if anyone has any questions as we go through. Feel free to tap anything into the Q&A box before we move on. I'll just give a little bit of time to see if anyone has any questions before we move on. Okay, no, so it doesn't look like we've got any further questions. Obviously, if you have any yourself, feel free to contact us. So you can contact us at office365@centrixsoftware.com. Contact your partner for any details about pricing, anything like that. If you want to see any further information, you can go to the Centrix Software website. There's plenty of resources there which are available to you. Feel free to use any of those. We'll also be contacting you after the webinar just for any feedback, so if you just feel free to contact us as well if you have any particular questions. So with that, I will pass over to Jo, and we'll just finish off the webinar.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dan. So if we don't have any questions, like Dan said, please feel free to contact us through the website. You also have my email address. So We will email you after the webinar with also current information on 365 offers that we're running at the moment. Thanks for joining.